Hey everybody, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology bringing you another chart reading. And today I'm going to be reading the chart of Khole Kardashian. And if you don't know who she is a reality TV star. She is a part of a family of reality TV personalities, and she in particular just had her first baby. And what is being talked about right now in celebrity news is the fact that the father of her baby, Tristan Thompson, allegedly has been having a variety of affairs with different people leading up to the birth of her baby, which this information just kind of broke about the week prior to her delivering the baby. So it's a sad and unfortunate situation if it is true, and the world's kind of waiting to see what she's going to do, whether or not she's going to stay with him or if she's going to move on with her life and her new baby. So I wanted to look at her chart to find out what was going on, and there's definitely some interesting things happening. If you want to follow along, her birth date is June 27th, 1984 in Los Angeles, California, and there's a birth time of 10:55 p.m. So looking at her natal chart, we can see that she's a Cancer sun at 6 degrees. Her sun is conjunct her Venus at 10 degrees of Cancer. And Mercury is nearby at 12 degrees of Cancer. So she's kind of got this stellium between the Sun, Venus, and Mercury in the sign of Cancer. And this is going to make her somebody who is a communicator, somebody who values beauty and values relationship with that Venus energy being near her sun. It's somebody who could potentially, write, creative writing type of thing with the Venus Mercury conjunction there next to her sun. It's also somebody who really is strongly identified with, how they think and feel. To have the Sun, Venus, and Cancer all in the Sun, Venus, and Mercury all in the sign of Cancer means that she identifies highly with the emotions and how she feels, and she will express that through her communication in a creative way, in a beautiful way, in a way that seeks to create relationships with other people. Now, that stellium in her chart is also trined her Mars at 12 degrees of Scorpio, and it's trined her Saturn at 9 degrees of Scorpio. So let's talk about Mars and Saturn in Scorpio. Mars in Scorpio is actually very comfortable because Mars is the one of the rulers of the sign of Scorpio. So this is going to be somebody who asserts themselves, which is what the Mars principle is all about, our courage, our strength, in this Scorpio kind of way. I mean, that can be, very intense. That can be very direct. That can be in a way that kind of penetrates deeply into things. And if you've ever watched her in the show Keeping Up with the Kardashians, she definitely is the one of the sisters who can kind of let it fly a little bit when she's, it's kind of like an energy of just being a real truth teller in a way, but sometimes saying it in a way that can be very direct. And sometimes, it can have that sort of Scorpio stinger kind of energy to it. So that's her Mars in Scorpio. Then it's conjunct Saturn at 9 degrees of Scorpio. So to have Mars and Saturn together in your chart, that definitely means that there's a lot of energy available to put towards going after your desires, going after your ambitions and creating them, and really making them happen, especially with Saturn, which is that energy of creating foundation and our work ethic, next to Mars, which is the symbol of physical energy and strength and courage. And to have Saturn in Scorpio, Saturn has to do, again, with our ability to work, our ability to create foundation. It also can relate to our limitations sometimes, and things that we have to kind of work on in this lifetime to get better at. So to have Saturn in Scorpio could suggest that the need there is to learn over time, how to go through that scorpionic process of death and transformation. And I know in her life, at least what we've seen so far publicly, she was in a relationship for a long while with somebody who, she kind of hung in there with it. And from the outsider's perspective, you might have been going like, why are you doing this? Why are you still with this person? And I would say that perhaps having Saturn in Scorpio could speak to that a little bit, where it's like the lesson in life is to learn, ultimately to learn how to let go. That's very Scorpionic. That's very much about what Scorpio is. It's about learning how to go through that process of transformation and rebirth, which involves that energy of having to let go. So that's her Sun, Mercury, Venus, stellium in Cancer, trined her Mars and Saturn. There's a lot of energy there for her to really create in her life and really produce in her life. And again, it also has something to do with, because Cancer has a lot of feeling and a lot of emotion. And so to have it trined that Mars, Saturn, and Scorpio, it just suggests that there is an opportunity and an energy available for her to really master this skill of transformation in her lifetime. The other thing that's happening with that stellium is that it opposes Jupiter in Capricorn. And that Jupiter is at 8 degrees of Capricorn, opposing her Sun, Venus, Mercury stellium. So when you have an opposition in your chart, it means that you're dealing with relationships with an opposition. So to have Jupiter, the planet of expansion, the planet of philosophies, wanting to grow our world, expand our perspective, in the sign of Capricorn, that can be kind of expanding through hard work. It can be expanding through, making those decisions to kind of eliminate things from our life, because Capricorn is about the process of elimination. It's ruled by Saturn, and Saturn can deal with paring things down, letting things go that are no longer serving us. So to have Jupiter in Capricorn, you do want to expand through work and business, but there's also this expansion through eliminating that which is no longer serving us. So it's interesting that she's got that Jupiter in Capricorn energy opposed all of that Cancer that really wants, to invest and to kind of hold on and to it's guided by its emotions and its feelings. But that Jupiter in Capricorn kind of says, nope, this is where we need to draw the line, and we're not going to continue in a particular direction. That's what Jupiter in Capricorn is good about. It can expand our world through making those decisions. All right, so just to mention a couple of other things in the natal chart, she's got a Gemini moon at 25 degrees, and that moon trines her Pluto at 29 degrees of Libra. And this is another part of her chart where she really is able to embrace that process of transformation with the moon, which is our emotions and our feelings, trining Pluto. Pluto ruling Scorpio. Pluto is about letting go. Pluto is about transformation. So, you know, she's got the capability to really move through that process of transformation in her life. Sometimes with the moon trining Pluto, you know, our feelings can be very intense, and Pluto can you know, if it's not operating consciously, it can sort of dig its heels in. And with the moon trine Pluto, that can be somebody who really feels a lot on a psychic level, or, you know, on a subtle level. It can be somebody with very passionate feelings. And I wanted to read something from the Astrology King about having a moon trine Pluto in your chart. He writes, it gives a rich emotional life and deep relationships. You feel things more than others, everything from news stories to relationships. You also feel things at a deeper level, at the psychic level. You should have good psychic skills, or at least a very acute intuition. Connecting to someone at the emotional level is important for you. Without such a close connection at the subconscious level, relationships would soon bore you. It may even feel like you are driven by a powerful, unseen force to understand a partner's inner psychology just as deeply as you try to understand yourself. You could feel that understanding relationship dynamics is necessary to maintain an intimate relationship. So this is probably somebody who doesn't like having learned, if this is true, that this person she had a child with has been cheating. I mean, that's with this moon Pluto, it's probably going to be somewhat easy for her to just say, nope, I'm not going to stay with this person anymore, because Pluto can feel not only jealousy, but it can just feel betrayed. And, you know, once it's sort of made up its mind that it's no longer going to put up with something, the moon Pluto kind of energy will just kind of say, done, you know. And from another website called theastrologyplace.com, they write about moon Pluto energy, that they have the capacity to enter into everything dark and can take negative or painful emotional experiences and turn them into something positive. They are willing to plunge into the darkest experiences and come out the other side feeling transformed. The feeling life of the individual will always want to explore everything hidden in the basement, but they have a real knack for bringing those emotions to the surface and fully experiencing those energies. All right, so that's enough about her natal chart at this time. We can move on to look at what's going on by transit, because really there is a lot for her. And if we take a look at where Saturn has been transiting through the sign of Capricorn. And in her chart, what's been happening right at this time is that Saturn has been opposing her Sun in Cancer, and Saturn has been opposing her Venus in Cancer. And to have Saturn opposing your Sun and Venus, first of all, it's a transit that only happens every 30 years in opposition. So this is more of a rare transit. And as I was mentioning earlier, Saturn can have an eliminatory effect, because we think of Saturn as, oh, you know, it restricts and it limits, but really it's about kind of restricting and limiting things in our life that are no longer serving us. So it's kind of causes this elimination process. And I would say at this time, with the Saturn having been opposing the Sun, which by the way started in February and ends in November of 2018, and also Saturn opposing the Venus, which started in April, right around the time of her birth, and and continues until December of 2018. These transits are two that are probably going to be the time that she really makes a decision about where she wants to go with this relationship in her life. Now, the one that speaks more to her relationship issues is that Saturn opposite Venus that I mentioned. And the Future Minders also write about this, and what they say is a turning point in certain relationships can manifest during this period, especially those that lack real substance. Whatever deficiencies exist likely become exposed now, and the weaker the bond, the more vulnerable to a separation. Problems you encounter may compel you to withdraw from people, as you may prefer being alone to being dissatisfied with others. This often is a reality check, that's very much Saturn, that brings back into focus the actual basis of any partnership. Those that are firm can become stronger, although it still may require that you take a long, hard look at any vulnerabilities so that you can address them. And the reason why it's talking about relationship is because that's what Venus is symbolic of. Venus is our loving energy and symbolic of our relationships. So it will be interesting to see how, this continues to unfold for her with that Saturn opposing the natal Venus, and then the Venus trining her natal Saturn and Mars in Scorpio. That just might be setting off that part of her that just kind of says, time to let go, time to transform, because she definitely has that energy available to her in her natal chart. She also had recently transiting Venus opposite Saturn. So I just talked about transiting Saturn opposite Venus, but she also had transiting Venus opposite her Saturn. So her natal Saturn, like I mentioned, is at 9 degrees of Scorpio, and transiting Venus was opposing her natal Saturn around April 7th, April 8th, just a few days before her birth. So again, it's bringing in this energy of the relationship, Venus and Saturn, a time of kind of clarifying the truth of things. And the Astrology King writes about transiting Venus opposite Saturn that it can bring sadness and loneliness because of delays and limitations affecting your love life and finances. So, just another symbol that perhaps things, were heading in this direction. And a few more transits and then some solar arcs that she's been going through. She has had transiting Uranus opposing her Pluto. And transiting Uranus has been moving towards an opposition. It will start to make an exact opposition actually later this month of April, but it's been hanging around within a degree this last year. And when we think of Uranus, we think of the unexpected, we think of shocking energy, we think of lightning, it's like this awakening energy, and often it can bring these shifts and changes in our lives, but ultimately it's for a higher purpose, it's for a larger order of things. And then when we think of Pluto, again, it's that energy of death and transformation. Her Pluto's in the sign of Libra, which rules relationships. So I would just say that this Uranus opposite Pluto energy perhaps is bringing in a new perspective for her on really, how she wants to think about relationship. Perhaps it's bringing more insight to her and making her, see that there's another way that she can do relationships, and she doesn't necessarily need to, do it the way she always has, because Uranus wants to bring some new knowledge to us, and Pluto wants to bring some sort of transformation, and Pluto in Libra, some sort of transformation, especially in the area of relationships. And Uranus being in Aries, it's like asserting the self in these kind of new, shocking ways. So it could just be bringing some energy to her to really face whatever it is coming up for her in her areas of relationships at this time. And it's interesting to note that her Pluto rules her 9th house of expanding the mind. So perhaps it's, again, bringing in new ways of looking at things for her. And that particular transit is happening from April 16th of 2018 through March of 2019. And the last transit I want to mention is good old transiting Saturn again has been conjuncting her Jupiter. And her Jupiter is at 8 degrees of Capricorn. And Jupiter is, again, expansion, it's growth, it's perspective. So with Saturn moving over it, that can just be bringing kind of some sort of sobering perspective, because if Jupiter's sort of seeing all the possibilities, Saturn kind of says, now wait, let's really look at this all realistically. So just to wrap things up here, there's a couple of solar arcs that she's experiencing that I wanted to mention. The first one is solar arc Uranus at 12 degrees of Capricorn is opposing her Mercury at 12 degrees of Cancer. And again, Uranus has this awakening effect. It brings insight, it brings knowledge, but in a way that kind of is very it's like insight, like we recognize something, we realize something. And in Capricorn, this could be sobering knowledge, or just some kind of like really grounded expression of this insight. And it's opposing her Mercury in Cancer. Well, Mercury in Cancer, it can be a very emotional energy, because Cancer rules the feelings and the emotions and our intuition. So when we communicate, we're communicating in a way that is expressing those emotions and feelings within us. It's also communicating in a way that's very nurturing and very mothering, those kinds of things. But with Uranus by solar arc opposing that Mercury, it might be waking her up to perhaps, areas that she expresses herself too emotionally, or just from that place of too much emotion. And it's saying, Uranus and Capricorn is saying, no, we have to be realistic here. We have to look at things practically, that kind of thing. Shaking her loose a little bit from too much connection, or too much connection to that emotional self. And then finally, she's had solar arc Venus at 12 degrees of Leo squaring her Mars at 12 degrees of Scorpio. And those are both fixed signs. So, this is an energy of really kind of digging in and holding on in certain ways. But to have this solar arc of Venus in Leo, that's really suggesting that she's going through a time where she's really connecting more with her needs, her Venusian needs, what she desires, what brings her pleasure, especially in the sign of Leo. That's like you're really feeling what it is that you want and you need for yourself. And squaring that Mars in Scorpio could be suggesting that it's asking her to let go of some of those more base desires, Martian desires, which rules our sexuality, and just asserting ourselves in this sort of like really intense and kind of attached sort of way. It's suggesting that there needs to be a balance that's found here between getting those Venusian pleasure principle needs met, while at the same time asserting the self, but not doing it in a way that's too attached or holding on too much. The Mars in Scorpio needs to learn how to really let go, and really pursue only those things that are best for us. So this has been my chart interpretation for Khole Kardashian. If you like my channel, please subscribe. I also do readings. You can reach me at info@highaltitudeastrology.com. Thanks so much. Adios.